Mom and May podcast. I'm May.
And I'm Mom. And today our topic is on humility. So go ahead and open us in prayer and then we'll get to it.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for letting us come here today after days and weeks of not being able to come on here and talk
Amen.
about your word and what you're speaking to us. But I pray that today you speak through us just as you would have those other weeks, if not more, to speak to people and even help us learn more from talking about you. In your name, amen.
Amen. So our topic today is humility. And May's like, let's talk about humility. And I'm like, okay. And then my mind went blank. I'm like, what kind of what are we going to talk about when it comes to humility? Like, I guess it's not something that I give much energy and thought to. So I looked up a definition. I asked ChatGPT what the definition of humility was, and it gave me like a generic definition that I didn't love, but then it also said, from a faith-based perspective, here's the definition it said: humility means acknowledging one's dependence on God, valuing others above oneself. It cited Philippians 2:3-4, and living with a heart of gratitude and service. It is not thinking less of oneself, but thinking of oneself less. I loved that. As summarized by C.S. Lewis. Why is C.S. Lewis so smart?
If somebody asks me my favorite quote, I always say, anything by C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, I'm going to read that again. It is not thinking less of oneself, because a lot of times I think that, like, in order to be humble and not prideful, I have to think less of myself.
Yeah.
But that's not what this says. It is not thinking less of oneself, but thinking of oneself less. So you're thinking of yourself less and thinking of others more. And I'm like, oh, that is perfect. You guys, ChatGPT sometimes has some good wisdom.
ChatGPT can sometimes stand for Christian giving prayerful topics.
Really? Did you just make that up? Or
yes, I just made that up.
I thought you
didn't
were
know
for
that?
real. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't think ChatGPT has anything to do with Christianity, but all right, go for it. So why do we need to be humble? What do you have on humility?
Well, first thing that I have is with Luke 14:11, that God humbles the proud but exalts the humble. So he rejects the prideful and arrogant. Like, Satan got kicked out of heaven because of pride. And you can probably bring back almost every sin to pride. Pulls us away from God.
Yeah, it separates us from God. And I saw that multiple times when I was looking up Bible verses on humility, and multiple times it said pride will separate you from God.
That just closes the door to spiritual growth, but humility allows us to fully, submit ourselves to God. Because if we're being prideful, then we aren't submitting ourselves to God, which is what we're called to do. And also, we are called so many times in the Bible to serve, and we can't do this if we're not humbling ourselves. It's kind of like if you're giving to somebody, but you're doing that so that people see you giving to somebody and applaud you for that, then that is not that. It's kind of the saying, like, if you give but don't have love, then it doesn't matter.
Yes, and I know there are people out there that give for the recognition, and honestly, it's hard not to.
Yeah, because you're like, oh, I'm giving.
Yeah.
Everybody, look at this. Watch me put it in the envelope in church. Look at crisp 20 I took out the bank yesterday.
Right, or if you do something for someone, like you want, or you go out of your way to do something, you want to share that because you feel good for doing it, and you want that recognition that you did something good. But really, we shouldn't need that recognition from other people. We should just know we are doing it because of God's
I wrote
heart.
down, when you serve, you don't do it to get praise or approval by people, but you do it because of your desire to serve Jesus and love him through that.
Yes.
And don't feel like, I'm doing all this great stuff and nobody sees me, and even sometimes I get hated, but Jesus and our Father in heaven, he sees you, and he sees your heart in your giving or whatever you're doing, and he rewards you for that. He sees you, and then he's like, oh, my child just did this out of humility and love for me.
Yes.
not for approval of people.
And God loves humility. Did you say James 4:6? Or you said a different one. But it's similar to the Bible verse you said. It warns that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Pride makes people self-sufficient. When you're prideful, like what's wrong with being proud? When you're prideful, it makes you self-sufficient. You're not relying on God, you're relying on yourself, and it can, if you think you're all that and so good at something, then it can cause you to ignore the need for God. Yeah. Here's the other thing with pride, because I'm like, well, so we should never be proud. Like, it's almost impossible not to ever be prideful, right? It's not like
really
if you
hard.
get a great grade on a test, you're going to
like,
be proud of yourself. Like, is that a bad thing? Or if you do great in a sport or you get the job, May just got the job, her dream job today. What? She just got a call out of 6 people interviewed and got her dream position. So, I mean, that's something to naturally feel proud of. But so I'm like, is it bad to feel proud of yourself? And so this is what I kind of researched and came up with. You can be proud of yourself, I feel like, and still be humble. Like, you can be proud of your accomplishments. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm awful, even though I got this amazing job position. But you have to remember, like, nothing would have been possible without God. Like, you have to give the thankfulness, the gratitude to God. Be thankful. Like, when I accomplish something, yes, I'm proud of myself, but I'm so grateful. Like, I really think about the people that helped me accomplish it, whether it was mentors or teachers or teammates or coworkers or just family and friends that just supported me and encouraged me. Like, I'm humbled and thankful that those people helped me get to what I was trying to achieve, instead of just being prideful about myself. And then I'm also super grateful for God, because he is the ultimate provider. Like, we wouldn't have any successes or any achievements if it weren't for him.
Yeah, I wrote that too. Like, everything we have is undeserved and given through God's grace. Like, we have nothing to be prideful about because God gave us everything we have and he could take it all away.
Yeah.
So really, we have nothing to be prideful about.
It is so funny that you brought up this topic of humility, because it's like, it's never a topic I would have been like, oh, let's do a podcast on humility. Like, it's just not something that would have come to my head. And so today I was teaching at co-op, and I was listening into a class that another teacher was teaching, and just thinking, oh, we need to do a podcast when I get home. I wonder if we're going to do it on humility. Guess what she talked about in the class? Humility. And she even used the word, she's like if you see someone on the street that is homeless and poor, like, you can be judgmental, but that is not being humble. And like, you don't know where that person's, what they've been through, where they've come from. And like, think about what we deserve. Like, think about where we would be without God and without Jesus. Like, if you think about that and what Jesus sacrificed for us because of our sin, like, that'll humble you really quick.
Yeah, I read this quote and it made me just like I was frozen at the spot. It was like something about how life was like, someone saying life is so unfair, like, what, I didn't deserve this. And somebody else said, well, I thank God that life isn't fair, otherwise we'd all be hanging on a cross.
Yeah, that's good to remember when we're feeling judgmental or prideful. I think one of the biggest reasons for us to be humble and demonstrate humility is because, like, as a Christian, we are called to be an example for who Jesus is. We are called to be a light for God. Like, we're supposed to allow God to shine through us, and the only way to do that is to try to mimic how Jesus lived his life. And Jesus was super humble. In John 13, before, like, back in those days, because they wore sandals and their feet would be all dirty, when they would go, if someone would have a guest over, they would have their servants wash their feet, or the host would wash their guests' feet before they came into the house. Like, that was showing an act of respect, to wash somebody's feet for them before they came in the house. And usually, like, it was a dirty job. Like, it's gross. They've been walking around all day and like dirt.
And they walk in sandals through mud. Like, it is not like the paved streets we have today or anything.
Right.
Like,
it was a yucky job. And so usually, like, if you were all high and mighty, you're not going to be washing people's feet. You're going to have your feet washed. So when Jesus was going in with the disciples for supper, he poured a basin of water to wash the disciples' feet. And the disciples are like, oh, no, 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 you are not washing my feet. Like, that's not how this works here. But Jesus is like, no, I'm washing your, like Jesus washed their feet. You call me teacher and Lord, and you are speaking rightly, since that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's. For I have given you an example that you should also do just as I have done for you. So Jesus is just reminding them, you know what? Like, just because I'm Jesus does not, like, he humbled himself and got on their level. He got below their level. Like, he was washing their feet and showing them how they need to behave. They need to be being servants to other people and to each other.
And even the way that Jesus came, he came as our king, but he came so humbly and lowly. Like, he could have descended from heaven on chariots and horses, but he was born not even in an actual, like, home or hospital or anything, in a stable.
Yeah, like, purposefully, Jesus was born, like you said, humbly. Like, he was not rich. He was not, like, almighty and did not live, like, he didn't have fancy clothes.
Yeah.
God, who should never have to experience pain and never needs to, sent his son, sent himself as human form to experience pain and sadness and suffering and starvation. I mean, like, all those things that he didn't have to do. But that was a demonstration of humbling himself and giving us an example of how we need to live.
Yeah. Kind of like how you said to live by Jesus' example. Matthew 11:29, take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. He just tells us right there, like, he is humble, and to take after him and learn from his character. And we should be looking at Jesus and then trying to strive and be like him as much as we can, because he is the example.
Okay, let's dive into how we can be humble. I have some different ideas. What's your first idea of how to be humble? Like, how do we actually put this into action? It's one thing to say, I'm going to be a humble person, I'm going to demonstrate humility in my life, but how do we actually do that?
Yeah, I have first recognized our dependence on God, because like we said earlier, without God we are nothing, without God we have nothing. So recognizing that and remembering that is the first step to being humble. It's just like, okay, none of this is mine, and I don't deserve any of this, yet God's grace, he gives it to me. And having, like, gratitude, learning how to be,
that's huge,
grateful and have gratitude in that is just like, because, like, anybody could be like, oh yeah, I'm grateful, but you need to practice that. When you go into prayer, have time of gratitude, just thanking and praising God for what he's given us.
Yes, I have that too. I have perspective and empathy kind of together, like, because I feel like sometimes as humans, it's easy for us to judge other people that either are living life differently or make different decisions than us, or are struggling or are suffering. And it's easy for us to judge them. But when we switch our perspective to maybe God's vision of them or God's view of them, and we're like, okay, you know what? These are all God's people. Like, how does God want us to see this person? Or be empathetic and trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes, or realizing that we haven't walked in their shoes. Like, we don't know how their life has been. We don't know what they've been through. We don't know what they struggle with. And so that can help you get out of a place of judgment and pridefulness and into a place of humility. I have a little note to remind myself about a story with May. I feel like she was born humble. I don't know. We can't all be born humble, May. No. Because even when she was little, like, she was in school and she was little, and some girl came up and shoved her in the bathroom. I remember she came home from school and some girl had shoved her in the bathroom for no reason, and she came home, and she, instead of being angry at this girl, like most people would probably be super angry. Do you remember this?
No.
You don't remember this? What in the world? Most people would probably be like, what a rude girl, she's an idiot, what a mean person, right? I mean, that's what I would probably be like if someone shoved me in the bathroom for no reason. She came home and she said that she's going to pray for her. I think you said, I'm going to pray for her because she must have a bad home life.
I don't remember this. It was probably that girl that was really... What grade was I in?
I thought it was 4th or 5th.
Okay, then it was probably that there was a girl who was really mean to me.
But, like, what little child thinks, like, puts himself in this girl's mind and is like, why would this girl do this to me, and thinks something bad must be happening in her life. Maybe she has a bad home life. Maybe her parents don't treat her well. Like, that's what she thought. Like, that's what we should all aim for. Like, that's amazing for a little girl to do that. And I'm like, wow, like, that is very mature of you. And we always teach, like, we try to teach our kids, hurt people, but that's easier said than to actually put that into action when someone actually is hurting you. And she did that from the time she was little. So I just love that story. I can't believe you don't remember that. What in the world?
I don't think I remember like anything from.
I guess
public
not.
school.
That was just an amazing time.
I have prioritizing your neighbor's needs, even your enemies. There's a saying, I might have said it on here. It's like God first, people second, and me third. That's like, the saying is I'm third. Putting God first, people next, and then yourself. It's like, prioritize others' needs before yourself. Like, if somebody's asking you, a friend comes to you to do something, and you're like, oh, but I really needed to do this or wanted to do this today, but they really need you, like, that is when you can prioritize their needs and put aside your needs.
Yes. And I have something similar. I said having a servant attitude. Like, go about life with a servant attitude. I feel like that's how Jesus lived.
Yeah.
Another one I have is realizing there is always more for us to learn and to be teachable and seek to grow.
Yeah.
Because if we get in that prideful state in any area of our life, we're like, we know so much more than everybody else. We know better than everybody. Like, we're an expert. That's when we can get too stuck on pride and not into enough humility.
And even as Christians, like, sometimes we're like, oh, I don't do that sin. I'm so much better than them.
Yeah. Yeah. Christians can be the worst when it comes to being prideful.
Like, you see a baby Christian and you're just like, oh, they're like, at least I'm not doing that. And you try to justify your own sin. You're like, sometimes it usually comes in a scenario where it's just like, oh, I can't believe I did this, but at least I'm not doing that.
Yeah. I see a lot of people say things or write things like, if you were a Christian, you wouldn't do this, like judging other Christians. And I'm like, ooh, pull that pridefulness back.
Yeah. It's because, like, people struggle with different sin.
Yeah.
So if somebody's struggling with a sin that you're like, oh, that's terrible, you need to reflect on yourself. Like in, I think it's Matthew, something in the Sermon on the Mount, 5, 6, or 7. And it's like, before you look at the speck in your brother's eye, observe and take out the plank in your own eye.
Absolutely. I think a big part of this is realizing that you can also learn from people at lower levels than you. So, like, as a parent, it's easy for us to be like, I know it all. Like, I'm here to teach my kids. I cannot tell you, I'm so grateful that I've been able to humble myself and just live a little bit more of humility when it comes to parenting, because my kids have taught me so much. Like, I've learned so much from my children. I have another May story. I have so many great stories about you that you probably don't remember. I'll tell you that in a minute. But like, even like if I'm teaching, I learn from my students. Like, I'm the teacher, but I learn things from them too. I learn lessons from them too. If I'm mentoring people in business, I learn a lot from the people that I'm supposed to be mentoring. Like, it's not just a one-way street. Like, if you are a leader, especially, I think it's so important as a leader, whether a parent or a leader in a job or a leader in teaching, whatever. It's so important to see people as equals, and treat them as equals and treat them as valuable. I mean, that's what I feel like makes a great leader. I think that's why Jesus was such a great leader. Like, he wasn't scared to just go get dirty and sit with the sinners, right? And sit with everyday people. And that's what I think we need to strive to do. But one thing I learned from May once, I was so stressed out. It was stressful being a mama and I was just behind on everything. I was so overwhelmed. Like, I was just so overwhelmed, and the house was a mess, and I didn't have time to clean the house, and it was bedtime, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. I need to stay up and clean all the house and do up laundry and the dishes, and I have to do this tomorrow. And I just laid down with her, and I think I just complained. I think I laid down with her to tuck her into bed, and I just said, I just told her, I'm overwhelmed. I have way too much to do. I'm so stressed. This house is a mess. And she said, Mom, When you die, is the messy house going to really matter?
When was this?
I don't know why you don't remember any of these great things of wisdom. It wasn't you speaking. It was probably all God speaking
I was
through you.
overwhelmed with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. And it just snapped me out of that thought process, focusing on all the things that I was behind on and all the things wrong in my life. And you're like, you're right. That doesn't matter. Me laying here with her and enjoying my time with her was much more important than me getting up and getting the house clean. And so like I learn from my kids so much, especially this one. Let's see, any other ways we can be humble?
I have practiced forgiveness.
Oh, yes.
If you, like, it says in the Bible, you need to forgive your brother before I forgive you. That's like God speaking. Like, forgive your neighbors before I forgive you. Practice. And when Peter asks Jesus, how many times am I going to have to forgive these people? He's like, 70 times 7. Not literally 70 times 7, but like
he's not going to just say 3 times.
Infinity.
Right.
Yeah. Like, infinite. Have infinite forgiveness for people.
And kind of on the same note, realize that you're going to be wrong and need to ask for forgiveness. Like, being okay being wrong.
Being humble, knowing... Well, no, duh. That's the entire topic. Like, knowing that God's mercy for you is not deserved. Like, you need his mercy, and other people are going to need our mercy and forgiveness at times. Mm-hmm. And so do we.
Yeah, and we are going to have to be okay apologizing and admitting when we're wrong sometimes.
I'm going to have friends where I'm going to have to go to them and say, can you forgive me for this? Mm-hmm. Because we're going to mess up too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. We just read about this on Wednesday. About humility.
Oh, you did?
This verse that I have.
Oh, yes. What's it say?
This was actually like everybody's favorite too. I'm going to read 14 through 16.
What book are you in?
Romans 12, 14 through 16. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud. Instead, associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own estimation.
Bam.
Mic drop. Romans is a whole book of mic drops. I have so many Proverbs. Proverbs is if you're looking for wisdom, Proverbs is the door to knock on.
I just have a note that Proverbs 11:2 says humility brings wisdom, pride leads to downfall. And there's tons of different examples of that in the Bible of different leaders who led with humility and found success and God's favor. And then there's leaders that led with pride, and ultimately that led to downfall.
Yeah, because when you're leading with pride, really you're just saying, I don't need you, God. Mm-hmm. Like, I know better than you. Kind of like if we want to do something and God's like, no, that's not my plan for you. And we're like, no, don't worry, it's fine. Like, who are you to tell God that your plan is better than his? Like, he knows so much more for us. He has more for us planned than we could even imagine. It says that in like Ephesians 3:20 or something. And then I have Proverbs 15:33. The fear of the Lord is what wisdom teaches, and humility comes before honor. Searching for wisdom, humble yourself.
I mean, that's true, right? If you're searching for wisdom, you're searching for someone to teach you or something to teach you. If you're actively searching for wisdom, it's hard to be prideful, because if you're prideful, you don't need to search for wisdom because you have all the wisdom inside you.
It's like kind of like, I forget who it is. I think maybe it was either in Romans or 1 Corinthians where Paul is teaching and he's like talking about them relying on their own wisdom and how that's not true wisdom. Like, it was either Romans or Corinthians, I don't know, who were so reliable and proud about their own wisdom that they were blind to God's wisdom. And that's, our own human wisdom is not true wisdom. That's actually stupidity.
And I think as humans, we are made, and maybe this is why, because we need to be seeking God continuously and asking for his guidance and his wisdom. Like, I think we're made for growth. I think when we think we've made it and we just live life and coast through, like, I don't think that's a good place to be. I think and that's why I push like mindset work and studying the Bible and learning more about a skill or something that you're interested in. I think growth is such an important part of being a human, and always seeking to learn more and to be teachable and to grow. And that's part of seeking wisdom, and obviously seeking God's wisdom first, but just growing in all areas of life, I think, is an important part of being a human.
Yeah, because we never know it all and we've never reached the end of our growth. Especially people say this with prayer is like you never figure prayer out. If you think you figure prayer out, there's more growing you need to do. Cuz like you've never reached the end of your growth with God.
Right.
Humility, the fear of the Lord results in wealth, honor, and life. Who doesn't want that? That's Proverbs 22:4. Proverbs 27 verse 1, don't boast about tomorrow, for you don't know what a day might bring. Kind of like, don't even say like, God, you're telling me to do this now, but I want to do it tomorrow. You don't even know if you're going to have tomorrow. I might have said this on here already, but like, you don't even know if you're going to wake up tomorrow. I don't even know if I have the next 10 minutes.
That's true. Someone could crash into our house right now, which
Like the house
happened right down the road. Someone just crashed right into their house, and the whole house is like busted out on one side.
Someone could crash right into us now, and we'd just be like, catch it on video.
Right. So if God calls you to do something, you got to do it now. You can't drag your feet like I like to. We are all going to work this week on being more humble, on demonstrating humility in our life, on seeking God for wisdom, and just living a life of gratitude and service. Like if we could just like every day wake up and be like, Lord, help me to be humble today. Show me how to live a life of gratitude and service. Like, man, can you imagine what the world would be like if everybody did that?
So humble.
Next week, hopefully next podcast, we have decided for our 10th episode, we're going to be doing a giveaway. So if you want to be part of that giveaway, it'll be something amazing. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you're following either our YouTube, our Apple Podcasts, or our Spotify, or our Instagram, or honestly, you can follow all four. We won't get angry if you follow all four. But then you'll be sure to be notified when episode 10 drops. I'm not sure what it's going to be on yet, but I'm sure it'll be amazing.
We're spontaneous.
I'm not prideful
here.
or anything. God will make it amazing. When episode 10 drops, we will have a giveaway and a way for you to get entered into a drawing to win something, because I'm excited that we're almost to our 10th episode already. That's it. Anything else you want to add, girl?
The information about the giveaway we're going to post on our Instagram.
Yes.
So you know how to enter and like...
So yeah, follow our Instagram to have the details, and we can share them on our podcast too, but the details are going to be on our Instagram, just at the Mom and May Podcast, all one word. So follow that, and then we'll post like in our stories, and we'll make a post on how to enter the giveaway when we drop episode 10. Have a blessed week, everyone.
Have a humble day.
Bye.